So we're back with hour 2. We've generated some scaffolded views and a scaffolded controller with Visual Studio, and we're going to start customizing this stuff. First thing we actually should do before we customize is let's add a link in our nav bar to the store manager so we actually have a link to get to this page. Right now, the only way we can get there is by actually expressly typing that URL in our address bar. So if we go into views and shared, we can open up our layout template. And at the end of my navigation bar, in fact, I think I'm going to take out the about and contact pages. We don't really need those. Those were just auto-generated. So I'll take out about. I'll just move contact down to the bottom. Call this store manager, which calls the index action of our store manager controller. I've removed about, and I've changed my contact link to use our new controller and new index view, and I've put that one as the last item in my nav bar. So basically line 30 is what's new. So now if we go back to our home page, folks, I could ask you, if you go out and come back in class, you can just gently close the door because often groups of people walk by and it gets really loud. Thanks. You don't have to close it tightly, it doesn't matter. Thank you. So now our about and contact links are gone. We really don't need them. And our store manager takes us back to this index view that we've just used scaffolding to build. So now we'll go back to our index view and we'll start customizing it. Let's make the changes we talked about before the break so that it looks better and works better. Actually, one other thing that bugs me is that this column has no heading from the scaffolded views. I always like to put a heading in every column. I think it kind of looks very odd without it. So in my store manager index.cshtml, notice at the end here on line 30 in our scaffolded view, it's got an empty heading tag, but there's no heading. So let's put in a heading here that says actions. So now we'll have a proper heading here. We also should change the names of the first couple columns as Matt was suggesting, right? We have a repeat of the word name and it really isn't very descriptive what it actually means. This should say album and this should probably say genre. Now there's two ways we can do this. I'm going to show you first how we would change it. Well, changing it in the view is pretty simple. If we want to change it in the view, so right now, notice the column headings, they're not hard-coded. They come from our model. It says HTML display name 4, and then it points us to a model, points us to the artist model and the name property, which kind of points us here to that property in our artist, which is why our heading says name. Now, if we want to overwrite this, there's two ways we can do it. Quick and dirty way is let's just highlight that, let's remove that, and we can just hard code in the word artist. We'll just replace the MVC code with the word we actually want to display there. That's one simple way of doing it. So if I save that change, and reload, it says artist, which is fine. For something like this, we might want to change it actually in our model instead. So there's nothing wrong with hard coding in the text that we want to appear there. That works fine. But the other option, so I'll maybe leave that one like this for now. So we have the same issue with our genre. Rather than just typing the word genre here, if I open up, if you don't have it open already, go to your models folder and open up the genre.cs model that Entity Framework built. We can actually set up a friendly name inside of our model. The benefit of doing this is that way every place in our application where it would display the genre name, it'll say whatever text we give it instead. So when we change it in the view, that change is only in effect on that one page. If we change it in the model, we don't want to change the name. We're just going to add, in effect, like an alias inside the model. So all of the views will then use that alias instead. So you'll notice here, right above the name, it has a certain property saying that the string length is 120. So what this will do is automatically create validation in any views that won't allow us to put in more than 120 characters. So we can actually put in, there's a property called display. So we can set up here, when we come back, Margaret, we talked about displaying the price as currency, right? So you'll see there's a display format option. So if we want to say for a model, this particular field is always formatted this way, we can actually do it in the model rather than having to format every view. We'll come back to the price in a minute. So with display, if I open a round bracket, if I start typing N, Visual Studio gives me this, name equals. But we want our display name of this property to say genre. So any place we use scaffolding, if I save change, now my view, it still says we haven't typed the word genre here. We're still using the original scaffold code, right? But what it's looking for is a display name, which we've now set. So now if we refresh our page, so both our titles are updated. We've updated one title by just hard coding it in the view, and we've updated the second title by actually setting a display. These work, we can use either one. Let's see what happens here. So now you can see the difference. Right? So they look the same here. So here we hard-coded the title. Here we set the display name property in our model. But when we go and look at the other views, right? So which way of doing this do you think is better? And why was doing it in the model better? Right. We didn't have to change anything on this view, right? Because all of the views share that model by changing. It's like defining the same CSS style on 5 pages or defining it as a class in your one CSS file and then linking them. We're really doing the same thing here. So by defining the display name for genre in the model, any view that displays that title automatically will show us the friendly name or the display name. So using the model is probably a better way to do it. Saves us time and work. Because now I got to go and change this one on this view as well. If I just set a display name for my artist in the artist model, so I'm just going to go to the artist model. I want to set a display name here as well. So if I add this display name to my artist model and recompile, now my view gets updated automatically. I haven't had to change anything in my user interface. So these are the kinds of little changes we're going to have to make when we scaffold. They're these small things that, we have working views that do create, read, update, and delete, but they're really not fully production ready. We've got to go through them. But great for prototyping, right? We have an idea. We want to show somebody, here's what we're thinking, here's what we want to plan. We can use this as a great starting point to show, and then we can sit down and talk about, okay, what changes do we want to make with this? But we don't have to delete the scaffolding and do all our hand coding. We can if we want to, but this is a great tool for us. Okay, so we've changed the titles, which is good. I probably should change this one back rather than hard coding the artist title. Now that we've added the display name in the model, we probably want to put that back to using the MVC code. So if we want to change the display name in the model, our title is not hard coded. Then we're going to get rid of this column. As Jacob rightly pointed out, it really makes no sense showing the URL to an image if we don't have the image. Let's just hide it. So I'm going to go back to here, and I'm just going to click undo once. I want to use the display name rather than hard coding in my title. Makes more sense. We have more flexibility. So we won't see any visual change, but now we'll be using the display name for both of these. And same when we go to our edit view. Well, actually, they've hard-coded them here on the edit view. Taking out the image is easy. Let's just get rid of our fifth column, both in the heading as well as in the table body. So we'll leave the last column. We don't have the URL, so we'll just remove that. And we'll remove that as well. So after price, we then just have our list of actions. Okay, so our table's looking a little better. Now we want to deal with the price. Right? Margot suggested this is a dollar and cents value, so it should be formatted that way. So we have a couple of options. We could format it in the view. We can add currency formatting here. Or what would our other option be? Where else could we add that currency formatting? Yeah, we could add it in the model. So inside of our, if we open up our album.cs, inside of price, we could add a display format. So let's try it in the model. Let's try it in both places and kind of evaluate which works better. Because it's not exactly the same as the display name. Similar, but not exactly the same. So let's say we want to try it here. So we'd use this property. We'd use display format. And we'd use data format string, which starts to pop up in my editor, equals. Oh, whoops, sorry, this needs to be in double quotes. So this is that same currency format we've used several times in the course. We used it in our Contoso application when we had our department budget. So this should give, say, wherever you're displaying the price throughout the application, use that format. So let's try this out. So now if I refresh my store, because this field is bound to our item price, and our item price has that display format in the model, it will automatically now show as currency just by adding our display formatting. So that's good. Let's check out how that works on the other views. If we click edit or details, do we still get our currency formatting? So when I look at the details, great, it's now formatted properly. Interesting. Notice what it did here. So here's our form. So when we look at price, it actually was smart enough to know for our input to ignore that format, right? It's stripped away, because watch what happens if I have a dollar sign here, right? It's added numeric validation, so it actually overrides our display format. Because, so this on an input overrides our formatting, which is great. So now everywhere that the price is displayed as HTML, it's going to be shown as currency. But anywhere it's used with an input, Scaffold is smart enough to strip out the formatting so we can edit that value, which is kind of neat, right? I can edit. But, so just used for display purposes only. So we could do the formatting here in our view if we wanted to. We could add basically that 0:C format in here, but it makes much more sense to add it in the model, because we're not going to just want to show it as currency on this page. We'll want to show it as currency on any other page. Like let's say we have a shopping cart. All of those views are going to want to display that value as currency too. I want to get rid of my details link, We don't need it here. Let's get rid of that. I also can get rid of this little separator bar. We don't need that. And we want to change these so that they show up as buttons rather than as links. Now, one of the neat things about the Razor syntax is by default, when we use this HTML action link, it creates just a regular link tag the user can click. But we can add, for example, we can just add a class definition on, and if we use a button class, it'll change how these render from links to buttons. So we've got really 3 parameters here, right? We've got the text of our link, the action it's calling, and we're passing in the ID along with it as a parameter. And the scaffolding does this automatically for us. Although we did it last week with the links we created on our main store page, right? We created these links to the different genres, and each one passed the genre name along. So we kind of did this already. We passed the value on our link. So after this, if we want to add a class, we can just set up another property. So what we want to set is the class. So for this, we'll use a couple classes, our default button, and also we'll make it small. So a little smaller than the regular size. So we're using Bootstrap as well as the default button class in our custom MVC style sheet that we got in our template. So if I add that, these should get, the first one should get changed to a button now. And it's got my little rollover effect, still uses my right colors. And it should still take me to, they're still links, so they should still go to the right place. So if I want to edit that album, right, still works. But by applying that, so we've applied the class for our formatting. So we want to do the same thing on the second one. So now we'll have 2 buttons rather than the 3 links the scaffold generates. If we wanted some other button because we had some additional action that the scaffolding didn't build, that's fine. We could do that. Maybe we had something like an album review page where we could click on an album and see all the customer reviews of that album. Well, we could just create a 3rd button here that linked to the reviews action and style it. So this is what the scaffolding will give us, but we can do what we want. We can keep what we want, we can make changes, or we can make additions to this. Whatever our application needs. So now we've got our 2 buttons. So it'll take me here. So we're getting there with our view. We've fixed the headings. We've gotten rid of stuff we don't need. We've added formatting. We should change the title, which is pretty simple to do. Rather than index, what title might make sense here? What would be a meaningful heading on this page? Okay, sure. you could go, or album catalog, maybe. Okay, so we'll just change that H2. And then we're going to make one last change to this page, which is we still haven't dealt with the display of the data. This is perhaps the biggest change, the most important change to make this page more usable. So it's pretty good now in terms of layout and format, with the exception of, in terms of, the HTML, but the data itself is still off. So we've made some changes in the view, we've made some changes in the model. In order to manipulate the data and how it's displayed, we're going to want to make a change in our controller. So our controller just runs a find and gets a list, and it sends that list back to the view. So let's go to our Store Manager controller, scroll up to our index view. So what we want to do before we pass this list back to the view, we want to sort it. So what now, and we've got some options. How do you think, what would be the best way to present this data so that it's easy for someone to look through? Because we've got options. We can sort by the artist, we could sort by the genre, we could sort by the title, or we could sort by multiple columns, first by one column, then by another column. What do you think would make the most sense in terms of how this data should be displayed to the user? We can also move the columns around. We don't have to keep them in this order. Whatever our first sorting column is, that should probably appear as the first column in the table. Okay, so first artist, and then the album title. So the genre can just kind of be the third one. Okay, that would work. Think we'll do that. Any other suggestions of how else you might sort it? Think about, as a customer, if you were browsing a music store, how would you want to search by? Okay, that would be another option. The genre first. I know what kind of music I'm interested in. So let me see the genres first sorted A to Z, so I can scroll and find the kind of music I'm interested in, and then by the artist. So either of those would work. I would suggest that one may be better. The only issue with doing artist first is you'd have to look through all the artists to find even the kind of music you want. So because genre is broader, it might be a good idea to make that one first. Because if I'm only interested in rock music, I can go right to rock and eliminate looking at 90% of them that way. So I think what we'll do first is we'll move this column both in the heading and view. Let's move it to the beginning in our view, and then we'll change our controller code to query by genre first, then by artist, and then maybe by title last. So if one artist has 5 albums, those 5 are going to also show up in alphabetical order. So we can actually sort by 3 columns. So we'll just modify our view first. So all I'm going to do is switch my genre and artist columns, switch the order, both in my heading as well as in the table. We're going to sort first by genre, then by artist, then by album, which isn't a bad approach because each one of those is progressively narrower. Genre is the broadest. Within genres, there are artists, and within artists, there are album titles. So we'll just swap those around, make sure it looks okay. So now genre shows up first. But our list is not in order. So if I was interested in pop, I'd have to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the list to know it's even there. So now in our controller, let's first sort by the genre, and then we'll add the other sorting after. Once we can do one, doing the others is really easy. Instead of just sending in the list, if I hit dot order by, we can then use one of these link expressions to say how we want to order the data. So we want to sort by genre dot name. So now when it's passing the list, that list is going to be sorted. We've changed our controller. We've modified our C# code. So we're going to need to rebuild to see this change. So now we're sorting on the genre column, which is good. I think our list is a little easier to read, but it's not great, right? Because even within the first genre alternative, there's no apparent sorting order now in here. We've got CA and then T, CH, CA. So we can chain together multiple order bys. So after ordering by the genre, we can put on another order by. Actually, sorry, rather instead of another order by, there's a function here called then by. So order by first, then by something else second. Then we want to sort by artist.name. We actually want a third one, which is album dot, oops. So it should be a dot title. But now we have three sorting orders. First the genre alphabetically, then the artist alphabetically, and then the title alphabetically. And once we recompile that, our list should be good. Should be much easier now. So now everything's in the right order. Genres first, then A to Z within our artist. And then if we scroll down and find an artist that has many albums, we can make sure those are in order too. So here, if we look at, there's lots of Iron Maiden albums, but they are sorted alphabetically from A to Z as well. So again, our scaffold is a really good starting point, but we have the ability to customize or override what the scaffolding gives us, either by just adding on to it or making changes so that our application works the way we want it to. Robert?
would it be possible to have an if statement in those so that the user could then pick how they want to sort? So let's say a hyperlink on the table headers, they click that and then it sorts by that and then the other things.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we could do is we could have an optional parameter here. So it would look something like this. Sorry, that should be lowercase. Actually, let me look at my other controller where you did it already. So we could pass in a parameter, or we could pass it in here, or we could have an overload. We could have a second index method. So one that takes no parameters and one that takes a string parameter. So we can pass that in from the view, yes. And then we could allow them to sort that way. Good question. We can also, let's say we get our scaffolded views and we start working with them and somehow we break them. We break something, it doesn't work. Well, you could just delete them, delete the controller, delete the view subfolder, and start all over again. And it will rebuild the scaffold. But it basically wipes out all of those views and any changes you made. If you generate the object with the same name, it's going to overwrite them all. Okay, last thing I want you to try is I want you to create what we don't have here. We don't have any kind of views or controller for artists. I want to use the scaffold. Should take you about 30 seconds to do this, and generate the artist controller and the 5 views for create, list, edit, details, delete. So just try, I've walked you through using the scaffold. You don't have to make changes to them, but just generate them. So on your own, create a artist controller and let it build out the scaffold views for you. And just make sure that then if you go to localhost/artists, you have working scaffolded views. So you could add edit, delete artists.
Like all at once, maybe have to delete all the associated files separately.
Well, you can just delete the views. You can delete the entire subfolder if you right-click the folder. So when I created the store manager, so inside of views, it generates this subfolder. And this subfolder has all of the views in it. If I delete that subfolder, it deletes everything there. And then so you just have to delete the subfolder from views, and then you delete the controller from controllers, and then it's gone. So see if you can generate those artist views. And if you go to /artists in the browser, you should be able to load your views. That's all it should. Right, so pretty easy. Few clicks. Meet that wizard, and it should give you views. Anybody having a problem getting the scaffolding to run? So all I really need to do is complete the wizard. So there. Done. Now notice this list. Our list isn't sorted. So if we want to sort the list alphabetically, it looks like it's sorted for a while. And we get down to the bottom and then there's more. So if we want to sort our list, we can just open up our new artist controller. And in our index view, we could add an order by. We just add that little piece on to the end. Our list will get sorted fully from A to Z. So our scaffold's done. Now we could take it and make whatever changes we want. So that's the only thing I added that scaffolding didn't give us.